everyone. This is Angela, and you're listening to Homeschool Unrefined, the podcast where we keep homeschool simple, real, and fun.
And this is Maren. You've got episode 109, Where We Introvert, with Jamie Martin. And we are going to get to that interview in just a little bit. But first, we want to just say hi to everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up every week. If you're new, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Yes. Hi, everybody. We are so glad to be back. If you are a new listener, welcome. At Homeschool Unrefined, we try to keep things more focused on what you're already doing and celebrating the things that you're already doing, and less about giving you a list of more things you need to be doing.
Exactly. We want you to give yourself credit for all the things you do right now and have done today.
And it's a lot of things.
And it's a lot of things if you start to think about it. And then also maybe we can help you take some things off your plate.
Right.
And simplify. So that's what we're here for. And we just want to give you a virtual high five.
Totally.
So way to go, Mama.
And a special hello to our Patreon supporters. If you are interested in supporting us on Patreon and getting extra episodes and a community of people, we'd love to have you. You can go to patreon.com/homeschoolunrefined.
Yes. So we are chatting, Angela, far away from each other.
Yeah.
You are in Costa Rica.
I'm in Costa Rica. And so if the connection sounds if I sound a little different, that's why, but we decided we're just going to go with it.
I'm really impressed. I'm really amazed that you wanted to do this on your time away.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm thankful.
For sure. I always love to. We're here for 6 weeks. We're gone for 6 weeks. And so, yeah.
Right, total, yeah.
So, my husband, Jeremy, he's been working many years as a business owner. And if any of you are business owners or know business owners, they work really hard and don't take a lot of time for themselves, generally speaking. And so he really needed a sabbatical. And so we decided that that's what we were going to do. Yeah. Yep, he's actually been wanting to do this for like 5 years, and we finally are doing it.
Wow.
Yep. So he's taking 6 weeks off, and we first traveled we did like a little road trip in the southern U.S., and now we're in Costa Rica for 5 weeks.
And I know that trip in the southern U.S. was really that's been on your mind for a long time. I know you've wanted to do that for so long.
It has. Yep. So I kind of tacked it onto this trip.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
Way to go.
So I wanted to teach my kids about some civil rights things, and there's a few museums in the southern U.S. that I really wanted to go to as a family.
Yeah. And
I thought it was so important as a homeschool family to take that kind of trip. Everybody has their dream trips that they want to go on, probably. Like some people it's like national parks, and some people it's like Washington D.C. or and this was mine. This is what I really wanted to do. And so I think it's probably
that is so awesome.
So we went to I loved it so much. We flew into New Orleans. Never been to New Orleans. That was amazing. I loved it. We were only there about a full day and a couple nights. So we just saw some sights there and had that experience. So loved that. And then we drove from there to Montgomery, Alabama, which Montgomery has a lot of really cool museums. So I know it's not like a top vacation destination.
Well, it's not like a huge city.
It's not a huge city. Huge. No, it's the capital, but it's pretty small as far as capitals go. But it's I don't know how many people live there, but it's a bigger city. It's a bigger.
How big did it feel? I don't know.
I don't know how big.
That's how.
It's not like a huge metropolitan area, but they did have a downtown, which is where we stayed. And so I don't know. I had been there before with Jeremy before we had kids. We had done a little road trip and gone through there, and I had seen some stuff, and I wanted to go back, and now they have more. So the big thing they have now is this new Legacy Museum that the Equal Justice Initiative made or developed. And it's about
In
in
Montgomery.
Montgomery, and it's about
Okay.
the African American experience in America from slavery to mass incarceration.
Wow.
And it is just so well done and so powerful. I just can't say enough good things about this museum. It wasn't like a fun museum. It wasn't like, oh, hey kids, have fun exploring all the exhibits. It wasn't like that. It was everybody walked in like respectfully, and there was a lot of different mediums for taking in information, like displays, videos. It was just like you could walk around and kind of get bits and pieces of information. So my kids are 10, 12, and 14, and they were the perfect ages. I mean, it held their attention. They were captivated the whole time we were there. We were probably there a half a day, maybe like, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
So that was just really well done. And the person who's the head of the Equal Justice Initiative is Bryan Stevenson, and he wrote the book Just Mercy, which was that my Loving This Week? I can't remember if that was my Loving This Week one time, but if you haven't read that book.
I don't know. Actually, I can't say. I know that you love the book. So I feel like it was a Loving This Week.
He's a lawyer.
That's one on my list.
He's a lawyer who works with people who are wrongly accused or on death row. So anyway, he wrote this book called Just Mercy. So if you haven't read that, I would highly recommend it.
He started this?
I think his so he wants to tell the story. Tell the story of African American experience in this country, and it's just it was so good. It was just so well done and so important. I can't think of anything more important that I want my kids to learn.
You've gotten me hooked. I mean, I've always thought, since probably maybe the last time you went several years ago, it's always been like on my kind of on the back of my head, but now I'm like, oh my goodness. It seems like crucial. Like we all need this.
I feel like it is. I feel like it's crucial.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then in kind of like the sister site to that is they also have a new Lynching Memorial. So it's a memorial to all the victims of lynching in America. Super powerful.
I think I saw some of your
I posted about it.
Instagram.
I posted about it on Instagram. Yeah, that was also super powerful. All the lynchings around the country. So so that was good. Okay, and then we also saw some Martin Luther King sites because he was a pastor in Montgomery. It was the only church that he actually pastored as a church. And he did that for 6 years. So we went to his church, saw his house, the parsonage, and got tours of those and had like amazing tour guides who just, loved their jobs, telling us all about this. And about his time there and the Montgomery bus boycott. And then we saw the Rosa Parks Museum, which was also really good too. So like just really good museums in Montgomery. And that was only scratching the surface. There's still like lots more things that you could see in Montgomery and other places in the South. It's just that's what we got to see. So So then since then we've been in Costa Rica, which has been really great.
So great. So, and in Costa Rica, you did for a week of surfing and yoga.
Yeah, we did a week at a surf and yoga camp that we've done before, which was just amazing. We loved it. Bodhi Surf and Yoga. I have to plug them if you want to ever go. Bodhi, if you ever want to go to Costa Rica, it's the place to go. And then we just rented a house in like a small town, and we're just hanging out and just like, trying to like live here. Like going to the grocery store, cooking food, seeing some sights. We're having some adventures some days.
Going for walks.
We're taking Spanish lessons. Just daily things. Great. So it's great. It's good.
I'm really glad you're doing that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, let's move on to our amazing interview that we had with Jamie. Jamie Martin is the editor and writer at simplehomeschool.net. She's been doing that for years and has just been doing a wonderful job. she's probably the person I knew first in the homeschool community, when I was thinking about
Yes,
homeschooling.
me too.
And I did feel I was just so excited about what she was doing, and it made me want to homeschool. So I'm always thankful to her for that. She also wrote a book. She's written a couple books now. Her previous book was called Give Your Child the World. And it's basically a resource book. And it gives you all these ideas of books you can read if you want to learn about a certain country or region in the world. So, and I know you've used that a lot. I've used it a little too, but I know you really have gone in depth with that book.
Yes, we loved that book, totally. And she has a brand new book called The Introverted Mom that comes out in a couple weeks. And we thought, what a great time to interview her when we just talked about introverts and extroverts 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a perfect fit.
And yes, and you and I both agree. Knowing yourself as an introvert or an extrovert has been life-changing for both of us, I think.
For sure.
And to get a book like this as a parent, how valuable.
For sure. I wish I would have had this 10 years ago.
With young
children. It would have been nice to know that I was an introvert and accept it and like celebrate it.
Yeah. Yes. And just use it as a strength for sure. And I think she does such a great job in this book doing that, helping parents figure out how to just, really accentuate all these great things about you.
And you are an extrovert. And you read the book, and so did you find it valuable to read her things?
I thought it was, it was so valuable, and especially because and we'll talk about this in the interview a little bit, but we have both functions. We are both extroverted and introverted, and we just lead with one. So I am an extrovert, though I do have this introverted function, and I need these things in my life too. I need these skills, and it's great to have a book because I don't lead with introversion, so it's great for me to hear from somebody who does, who's really great at it and so self-aware, and so very helpful.
Yeah, so Jamie has been homeschooling about 10 years. She has 3 kids who are now teens. She was actually on our show about a year ago, with episode 72, where we talked about simple homeschool. And we love keeping things simple. It's something we talk about a lot here. So we loved having her on to talk about that. But today we are talking all about being an introverted mom. Well, welcome, Jamie, to Homeschool Unrefined. We're so glad you're back.
I'm so glad to be back. Thank you both for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah. Well, last time you were on the podcast, we talked about personality types because Maren and I are both really into that.
Yay!
So could you just remind us of your Myers-Briggs type, and if you know any of your other personality profiles?
Yes, I can. I am an INFJ on the Myers-Briggs, which is supposedly the rarest type, called often referred to as the advocate, I think. And then on the Enneagram, I'm a 4 with a 3 wing.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And what else is there?
I know. There are so many. I mean, you could do, I don't know if you've ever done the disc or the
really
4
done
tendencies.
But the 4 tendencies, yes. I'm kind of a little bit lean more towards rebel with questioner influence. But I think mostly a rebel. And Maren, are you a rebel?
Yes.
Okay, I remember reading that. Okay.
Yep, and Angela is a questioner, so we both can kind of relate. And I think actually, the more I think and read about the 4 tendencies, I probably lean more towards questioner too. Like I'm a rebel with maybe a little questioner.
Okay.
But in me, so I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. And Jamie, I think I remember you're a highly sensitive person.
Yes.
Did you say yes? We talked about that last time.
Yeah. I am, and I talk about that a little bit in the book as well.
I'm sure you did.
Yes.
Yep.
And so we just started a series on personalities for the podcast, and we just did a quick introduction last week or a couple weeks ago about just all the things that help us know more about ourselves. So this is really appropriate for our discussions that we've been having on our podcast. So I'm so glad to have you here today. And really, one of the biggest things we talk about, one of the very first things we talk about with our listeners and anybody who asks us about personalities, one of the first things we talk about is introverts and extroverts. So when we would just love to hear your story, Jamie, like when did you realize you were an introvert, and like how did that change the way you felt about yourself and the way you looked at yourself?
Yeah, I think I realized it when I one day took a glass and threw it across the room, and it smashed onto the other side and broke into hundreds of pieces.
I think there's a story there.
Yeah.
Yes, I tell this story in Introverted Mom because it was kind of the, oh my goodness, I have got to, like, I can't just ignore this anymore. Because I had known I was an introvert ever since high school, probably. I think that's when I took my first personality test. But it wasn't until motherhood, and especially mothering multiples, so going from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3, when it was so much harder to find that alone recharging time that introverts so desperately need. And before that, and you have a really crazy draining day. Okay, well, you go home and you watch TV, or you sleep in a little late the next day when you can, or you take a nap when the baby takes a nap.
Right.
But when one baby becomes 2 babies and when 2 babies becomes 3 babies,
oh yes,
that's not necessarily so easy anymore. And I had this sickening moment when my kids were all 3 preschoolers, and they were maybe 4, 3, and 2 at the time, or maybe 5, 4, and 3. And no one was with me when this happened, thank goodness. But I found myself in a place of fury, honestly, and rage. And those are not words that anyone would have ever used to describe me before, or that I would ever have used to describe myself. That wasn't how I saw myself or how I thought of myself. I thought of myself as a pretty patient, calm, easygoing person. And that's why I'm so passionate about this message, because I feel like I really didn't understand why I was suddenly struggling in such a huge way. Right. And if I would have really understood what it means to be an introvert, then it would have been like, oh, of course, I'm not at all getting what I need to be my best self, and in turn to be the best mom to my 3 little ones. Right. I'm, sleep deprived. I'm not recharged. I'm drained. I'm daily dealing with multiple issues and conflicts and things like that. So, so it was recognizing in that kind of huge not to be ignored type of moment that I really saw, okay, this is something serious. But because I didn't understand myself as an introvert at that time, it brought on more guilt, right? Like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I do this? This is exactly what I wanted to do and still want to do. And I love these 3 little people desperately. So why am I so exhausted and weepy and angry? And that's what I want introverted moms to know, is like, there's nothing wrong with the mom that you are. And if you understand yourself, you'll be able to at least understand why certain things are so hard, in the worst moments where self-care is just non-existent, or really, really hard to come by. And in the best case scenario, you can take yourself and your personality's needs into account, knowing that if you do, then your whole family will reap the rewards, because introverts have a lot of special gifts that they can offer to their families.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, that's just awesome. I really resonate with you when you're talking about, before kids. I feel like I could just step up whatever I was, whatever I wanted to change about myself, I could probably just will myself to change things sometimes, because I had more energy. But when you have kids and like you said, multiple kids, like
right.
you are forced to really take a look at who you really are.
Yeah.
And I think then the next step, like you said, is like to understand that who you really are is not necessarily a bad thing just because you wanted it to be differently. You wanted things to go differently. It's not necessarily bad. It's not it's who you are. It's good.
Right.
Yeah, I can really resonate with that because I'm really happy for all the young moms who are going to find your book. Like before they have kids or just when they're starting to have kids. Because I wish I would have had somebody explain that to me when I had young kids too. And then once you learn that you're an introvert, then it's a whole process of like accepting yourself. And so I'm curious, Jamie, how did you learn to accept yourself as an introvert? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yes, I think that's a really good question. And I think I still am in an ongoing process of that, like all of us with whatever characteristic or feature it is that we're talking about, right? Self-acceptance, self-compassion is like a lifelong journey. So it's really important to just mention that. It's not like I feel that you figure that out and you do it one time and then you're good to go, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I think it's really important to note, okay, what are all the strengths that introverts uniquely bring, right? And those are things like introverts naturally gravitate toward depth and like quality over quantity. So you can see how that would enhance your family, right? You can sometimes feel like not all introverts are intuitive, but yet there's like a depth of connection there that comes from that tendency for the deep over the shallow. Now, I'm not saying that extroverts are shallow at all, Maren.
Yes,
no. Extroverts have, you need to write the book Extroverted Mom, Maren.
Sure, no problem.
Extroverted moms have, plenty of their own unique strengths that they bring to the table. So I'm not at all trying to diminish those by talking about introverts' strengths.
Totally.
But I think sometimes because the term introvert has had a negative stereotype in society at times, then sometimes I feel like when we talk about accepting ourselves as introverts, it's like accepting that you have some kind of rare disease or something. And you need to accept it and come to terms with it. And, and instead what I'm trying and hopefully accomplishing with this book is like to get moms to be able to celebrate who they are as well as, of course, introverts are going to have a lower tolerance for kind of the chaos of family life.
Sure.
And so there are definitely parts that will need accepting, like accepting your own limits. And knowing that when you do, then that's when you'll really be able to come alive and you'll be able to enjoy yourself as a mom, as a person. We are the one-on-one people who are going to really connect with not just our kids, which we will, and our families, but others in our lives, right? We're the ones that can kind of go deeper and share more intimately when we really are feeling at our best and our most recharged, because it's not true that, the common stereotype, like introverts don't like people or something. And sometimes it's funny to like joke around about that. But that is not the case at all. We love people in the right context. And if we have been recharged and have plenty of energy, then we're going to enjoy, our activities and our church groups and our whatever fill in the blank your thing is. But because people time still drains us instead of gives us energy, then eventually, even in the best case scenario, that time around people will still drain our energy away, and we'll need to get alone to kind of restore that again. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That makes so much sense. And I think you are spot on. And I do think, and we're going to talk about this more when we do our episode about the Myers-Briggs. But when we talk about extroverted and introvert and extroverts and introverts, we have both functions, and all of us do, right? So, and we just lead with one, and sometimes we lead really strongly with one, and sometimes, there are, you need more of, even an extrovert needs more of this balance too.
Yeah.
And so I really, I do resonate with that. And it's one thing that I learned so much about myself when I was going really in depth about the Myers-Briggs, was that as an ENFP, my second function is a pretty strong introverted function. And it is, I have to do a lot of introspection. I have to do a lot of evaluating, like kind of taking the world and like figuring out how it all fits together with everything, and so I really, when I was, reading your book, I was thinking, this is so good for me as an extrovert to realize that I have those needs too. And I think as an introvert, you probably, number one, are better at identifying that, maybe, because it's your first function and you're stronger probably. And then, and also it's more required. It's like a requirement, where for me, I can maybe get by with a little bit of less of that. But it just has to happen for you. And I think that's so great for us to know.
For sure.
Yes, definitely. And it's a very valid point that everyone, introverts and extroverts, during different part of our days all day long. And so it's good for introverts to kind of be aware of our need to extrovert, because actually I talk about this in the book as well. Happiness researchers have found that the act of extroverting actually is correlated with being happier. And that doesn't mean that extroverts are necessarily happier than introverts at all, but what it means is the act of putting yourself out there in relationships. And extroverts and introverts tend to do that differently in different spaces. But it's really important to find balance and to know when, as introverts, to step out of our comfort zones. I talk about that as well, because yes, both of us need to kind of hone in on the other side in order to make sure we don't delve into unhealthy sides of ourselves.
For sure. Yep. And it did help me when I did dive into extrovert and introverts a little more. It helped me so much understand my husband, who's an introvert too. And realize that when he says no to things that I want to say yes to, it's not, it's not because of anything personal or anything. It's just, that is self-care.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So I was just thinking, I grappled for a long time about how crazy it was for me, for Shaun and I, to have so many kids. We had 4 kids in 4 years, and it was a crazy time for us. And a lot of people thought we were crazy. I mean, I think they did. They just looked at us like, oh my goodness. So, and I can imagine you maybe felt the same way, because I know as an introvert, and maybe you weren't, maybe you didn't. I know you had this. Definitely more self-awareness after you had kids, but during that time you probably knew, I know I need a lot of downtime, a lot of alone time, and yet I'm going to adapt, and that's going to take a lot of time. So how did you move forward in that time of your life, knowing what you needed and how big the challenges were ahead of you?
I don't know that I necessarily knew what I needed, for one thing. And then I also mercifully didn't know how big the challenges were going to be, which I think most moms can relate to that in whatever our unique circumstances are. And that is, usually a blessing, really.
Yes, I think that's the same for me too. Yeah, I just didn't know.
Yes. I know. Courage to do it. I think if I would have known and understood myself more as an introverted mom, then I might have not struggled with guilt quite as much. And that's the big message that I want to pass on to other introverted moms of littles, because I still did take the downtime that I needed by putting on a video for the kids. We always had, even after my kids stopped having naps, we still had afternoon quiet time because I had to have that. It wasn't an option to not have it. And part of me definitely knew that. But because I really didn't understand why I needed it so badly, then I just did it with so much guilt. And that's the part that I would love to help. I know that we'll never eliminate that for moms, sadly, but I do want to help alleviate it, right? Because I think I could have understood that by giving myself this, I'm really a better mom for it. I'm going to be a happier mom, and I'm going to be a better mom to them. So those are two things to keep in mind when it comes to thinking of having multiple littles as an introverted mom. But as I went along, I would say that I came up with a phrase that helped me to figure out what I should and shouldn't do. And I talk about this in the book. I call it I only do what's mine to do. And so the list of what's yours to do is very small. For me, at that time, it was like, take care of my kids, feed them, try to be there for my husband, read aloud to the kids, and read for myself, because that was really refueling to me, and try to get enough sleep. And then eventually, after a while, I started writing, and that was it. For the most part, that's still it.
Yeah.
There's not there's not a lot. And actually now, because my kids are teens, I rarely I make dinner like once a week, and that's it.
Nice.
Some of it has actually been taken off my plate. And yeah, your list of what's yours to do is going to be very small. But I also make the point in the book that when you first become a mom, you don't know what's yours to do necessarily. And so you kind of have to figure it out with trial and error. So I can remember one time I like tried to do this salt dough craft project with my kids. And I hate crafting, and I don't know why I even did it, except that I just thought that's what moms did.
Yes.
And that it was so much fun and everything. I even have a blog post on my blog about this, which is funny. When I did it, my blog Steady Mom, which was my very first way back when. Yes, and I saw other bloggers like crafting, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be a blogger, so I guess I must be crafting. And I was exhausted, and my kids were really interested for half of it, and that was. And then I think at the end of the day, my husband was like, Jamie, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Because he could see, like, this was never me. So that's how I figured out that wasn't really me. Yeah. For some moms, that might really be exactly their thing to do.
Sure.
So it's really fine that you don't know at first, and you probably try things, have some failures, and you narrow it down as you go along. But once you start to hone in to those things that make you come alive and that your family really enjoys and values, then that's what you've got your kind of short list of probably 5 or 6 things tops. And that's your life, more or less, right?
Yes, that's so good. I love that so much. And I don't think about that often, but I need to, because you're right. There are things that only I can do, and the other things, aren't as, they just don't need to be as important. But there are like probably 5 things that are only for me. And if I can focus on those, everybody, including my kids and husband, and everybody is going to be much happier.
Exactly.
Yeah. I remember once we had our 4th child, I just remember saying, this is my excuse to say no to like everything. Everything.
Yeah. As if the first 3 weren't.
I know, right, I know. But But right. It shouldn't have gone that far. But
it's still okay to say no if you have no kids.
Always okay. It's okay.
To say no. Yeah.
But it is required learning for parents for sure.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk about the decision to homeschool, because I think whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, for both those types of people, it can seem scary. And so I'm curious, as an introvert, how you felt about that decision. Was that a tough decision for you? How does it work as an introvert to be a homeschooler? How do you find time for yourself?
Yeah, it was definitely not an easy choice to make, because I still was struggling with that stereotype that only weirdos homeschool, right?
Yeah.
And that homeschoolers weren't a part of the real world and all these things. And that was a process of self-education for myself in order to make that choice. But in one way, it wasn't difficult even as an introvert, because so many of the ideas of school-related things seemed very draining. So the idea of my kids having to sell wrapping paper every spring, or the idea of having to sign up to volunteer to be on the PTA or walking my kids down to the bus stop every morning and standing there with the other moms and dads and things like that are equally draining as things that we end up doing as homeschoolers. But when you homeschool, you're kind of in charge, right? You are the superintendent and the principal, so you can decide the things that are going to drain you. As opposed to having no control over those things. And so I do feel like homeschooling can work really well for introverts because of the fact that we set our own schedules. So we can take into account our personality needs and our kids as they get older, and we start to sense their personalities' needs. We can factor all of that in to develop something that works for everyone as much as possible and takes into account what everyone genuinely needs. So I do think it's possible to homeschool as an introvert. I also don't think that homeschooling is right for everyone, or try to hold it up as some, the one way to educate. I think that just adds guilt to people, and that, we just need to have the courage to do the next right thing. And if that ends up being homeschooling, I think it can definitely work. We have been so blessed by homeschooling, and now my kids are 15, 14, and 13. It's a very different season, but I just see how connected we all are still, and how connected they are as siblings. And that's probably the biggest thing that just fills my soul as a mom, is that I still feel connected to my teens and feel like they still like me and I still like them. And that's no small feat in this day and age.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think that's a good balance to, when you know what to say no to, what you're open to saying yes to the things that are, really important to you, which brings me to my next question. I know what we talk about on our podcast a lot is if it's not a heck yes, it's a no. We say that a lot, but I know in your book you talk about like some maybe addendums to that idea, which I thought were so insightful. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I do.
I think you know what I'm talking about. Some of the stories. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with saying no to some things, and just your thought process of, when you're making decisions?
Sure. Well, the story I tell in the book is how I had discovered this idea of essentialism and the concept of, if something's not a definite yes for you, it's a definite no. And I was just giddy with the freedom of that and how easy it made things to say no to, which had always been so difficult before, or maybe made me struggle with decision fatigue at other times. And suddenly it was easier to say no to those things. And I loved that. And then I went on a vacation with my husband alone. It was his 40th birthday. We went to Turks and Caicos, which was incredible. And one of the things that he wanted to do, my husband's an extrovert, while we were there is go on one of those boats full of tourists and go snorkeling. and and when he told
Angela,
me this,
are you laughing because you're like, yeah,
we're doing that in 2 weeks, so maybe we should talk. Yeah.
Okay, that's so funny. Yes, so when he told me this, I mean, the very first second after it came out of his mouth, I'm just thinking, oh no, no. I knew that was not a definite yes. And in fact, my brain is like trying to give me warning signals, like, no.
Get out of this situation.
So for me as an introvert, the idea of, maybe we had 4 days or something on the island. And for me, it's all about relaxation, building up all that recharging time. So I did not want to use like half of a day in this thing that was going to be draining for me, right? And the cool thing at the time was that my husband understood that, and he was totally fine with me not going. So I didn't. So I had a few hours alone at our little apartment we were renting. He went. And then afterwards, I really started to feel like maybe I had made the wrong decision. Because I think we all have had this experience, probably either extroverts or introverts, where we're pushed outside of our comfort zones for the right reason, right? I'm not talking about just for any reason, but for a good reason. And later we look back, and even if it was stressful, exhausting, whatever, we are glad that we did it.
Yep.
And looking back, I just realized that I feel like it could have been one of those times when Steve and I would have had this, goofy, draining experience together. But afterwards, all that would remain, even if we took it easy the next day and I was totally exhausted, would have just been this memory, right? And that's what I said no to. It wasn't the experience, it was really the memory. So after that trip, I revised that kind of essentialism guidepost to say, if it's not a heck yes for anyone in my family, it's a no. And because that way we know there will be plenty of things that kind of push us out of our comfort zones because, our kid really wants to do something. And we say yes to that. And I'm not talking about kind of following your family's every whim, but those things that you can tell are definite yeses for your children because they keep coming up again and again and again and again. And so it's those things that I'm really talking about. I love Gretchen Rubin's quote where she says, happiness doesn't always make you feel happy. And I have really seen that to be true in my life when things now that I look back, 10 years ago, and I can smile at the memory of even, something silly that went wrong that was not fun at the time. Now you laugh about it or whatever. And so I think that's true, Gretchen Rubin's quote. And so that was my experience in Turks and Caicos that helped me redefine essentialism in a family context. And that's worked really well for me since then.
Yeah, that is so good. That is so good. I feel like as an introvert, I can get stuck. And, I'd always rather stay home and read a book or, or whatever. But I do have to be pushed out of my comfort zone. And the people who do that are the people in my family. This whole trip is like the perfect example. This is my husband's heck yes. And do I want to be, it's amazing, but I would rather be home. I'm glad to be here and everything. But I love being home. I just love being home. And so it pushed me out of my comfort zone a little bit. And I'm so glad it did because I'm having great memories and great experiences. And yes, sometimes I'm exhausted, but it's okay for now. It's okay. And I can find moments of rest in this new draining experience.
Well, and I think we all have to go through this self-awareness, and you can't just get there. You can't figure out that balance unless you go a little too far this way and maybe a little too far that way until you kind of hone in. I remember when my youngest was probably, I'm going to say 2.5, maybe potty trained and not nursing, kind of like that stage where I felt this huge freedom. And as an extrovert, I was like, oh, I get to say yes to everything now. And I probably went through a year of just like feeling this sense of, freedom, and I felt like I was getting my life back or whatever, but it was like way too much for the rest of my family. So like I had to learn that lesson in kind of, in the opposite direction. Like, if it's, I have to think about the rest of my family too. And like, if it's not a yes to them, then I maybe need to reconsider sometimes.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Jamie, I wish we could talk to you so much longer, but we are going to continue this conversation in Patreon. So if you are not a member of our Patreon, if you're not a member on Patreon, join now and you get to listen to some more of this conversation. Jamie, thank you so much for being on. Could you tell everyone where we could find you, and maybe tell us a little bit about how we can get your book? And I know you have some special things just for people who pre-order your book.
That's right. Introverted Mom comes out May 7th. And if anyone orders it before then, I've created a package I'm calling A Year of Introverted Mom Inspiration. It's a package of 4 different pre-order bonus, and each one is for a different season. So one for spring is a self-care program called Spring Break for the Introverted Mom. And it doesn't require you to go for a week of spring break away from your family, as if. But it just requires you to kind of try to carve out maybe 5 to 10 minutes for yourself in the morning to listen to an audio devotional that I've recorded, one for each day. There's a self-care theme for each day. And so if you could find maybe 30 minutes each day for that different self-care theme. It's just designed to give you an exhale at that time of year when the outdoor world is kind of springing to life, and to provide that for moms as well. Then in the summer, I'm going to be running what I call the Introverted Mom Summer Book Club. And it's going to merge a book club for moms, for introverted moms, with a book club for your kids, with the idea being that you give your kids something to keep them occupied, and by extension, you gain a few minutes for yourself every day that you can devote to your own book club, which I love. And the people who pre-order the book are going to get to sign up for that first and get all the materials first. And I'm really excited about that. Then my autumn pre-order bonus is my first book I ever wrote. It's called Study Days. And I created a printable package that goes along with it that you get at the same time. And Study Days is all about finding rhythm and routine, so it's perfect for back to school season, and that's why I thought it would work really well as a bonus. And then the winter bonus is called the Introverted Moms Advent Calendar, which is something I made, and it allows moms to have this small snippet of intention within the Advent season. So those are things that you'll get all at once when you pre-order Introverted Mom from any retailer, and you can find them all at simplehomeschool.net/bonus.
Great. That sounds great.
Yes, that sounds great. I mean, just things to take care of yourself all year round, which is just awesome.
And if you're going to buy the book, you might as well buy it ahead anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, get all those bonuses.
Yep.
Yes. And then they can find you. You're still blogging regularly at simplehomeschool.net?
Yes, simplehomeschool.net is kind of my main area that I spend time in. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for being here.
Thank you. I've loved every minute of it.
Us too.
All right, let's move on to Loving This Week.
Yes.
Maren, what are you loving this week?
Okay, I am loving, they are shoelaces.
Oh.
They're called Xpand laces with an X at the beginning.
Okay.
Xpand laces. And they're tieless shoelaces.
Okay.
They're very elastic. And so you put them in, and they give you these special little clips to put at the end of your shoelaces, and you can make them as long as you want. You can make them as tight. You can make your shoes as tight as you want. or as loose as you want. And then they have these little end caps, and you can even hide the end caps if you want. So like they give you these tutorials of how to lace your shoes if you want these certain looks or whatever. And they're just so great.
So why do you like them versus the old-fashioned shoelaces?
I like them because I don't like to tie my shoelaces. First of all, I just don't like. I got a pair of Converse recently. Yeah. First pair of Converse that I've had since I was in 8th grade. Okay. I'm trying to let myself enjoy those as a 42-year-old. But anyway, and I was like, I am not enjoying tying these shoes.
Oh yeah, because there's a lot of time.
And I've actually gotten these. It's a lot of time. Back and forth. And it's these Converse, they're like the kind of shoes where you can't just keep them tied and slip on and off. So I have to tie them every time. So anyway, decided to get these because I had gotten them for my kids in the past because I have kids who just tying shoes is just a challenge for some of my kids. It just is. I think it's fine motor. It's like some learning differences or whatever, So it's a few things. So I thought, my kids have been enjoying them for months. And I've enjoyed that we don't have to, stress about tying shoes every time we go somewhere. And so I thought, I'm just going to try them for myself. I'm loving them.
Wow.
Loving them.
I can always count on you to try out all the new technologies. I've never even heard of these. But you're always like the first to jump on board with new things. So that's great.
Well, I know. I also somehow, Instagram knows exactly what I probably would like. And so I think I got an ad for it. And I tried them.
Okay. Awesome.
So, and they were right.
Yeah.
Instagram, you were right. This is what I wanted. And you can get them in all different colors.
You get them on Amazon?
And you can get them on Amazon, which is, kind of key.
Right.
So, yeah, loving them. And I'll probably get more now.
Yeah. Okay.
For all my other shoes.
I'm picturing.
And you can even.
I got to get a picture of them. I'm sorry. I got to get a picture because I'm picturing those curly laces. But that's probably not what they are.
Oh, no. No. You actually don't even see the ends at all.
Oh.
You don't see the ends. So it's just, all you see is the laces going through the holes. Okay. And that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. You don't have to show me. It's fine.
And they do, you can lace them in different ways too. So they give you very specific ways to lace them.
Next time I see
you might not be sold until you try.
Next time I see you, I'm going to have to get a look.
Angela, how about you? What are you loving this week?
Okay, so I am always looking for ways to get my news. And,
yes.
I don't know if this is going to be my long-term solution, but this is what I'm loving right now. There's 2 different things that I'm loving. One is Katie Couric has a newsletter, a daily newsletter that's brand new. It's called The Wake Up Call.
Okay.
And it's just a daily digest. I would say similar to like the Skim. It's a daily news digest. But I love Katie so much. Love following her on Instagram. And I don't know, I'm just like reading it in her voice when I read it. So that's why I like it. It's probably top 5 stories of the day. It probably takes me a minute to read. And I just know like what's going on. Okay, here's the top 5 things. And if you want to learn more, you click and you can learn more about it if you want.
That's so
but
nice.
I feel like, okay, I know what's going on. So that, and then also one of my past loving this week's was Shaun King on Instagram.
Yes.
I really love him. He has a podcast, a new podcast.
Oh, really?
Yes, called The Breakdown with Shaun King.
I'm going to have to put that on my list right now.
It's a daily news podcast.
Really?
It's probably 15 minutes long each. It's only been out a couple weeks now, but I've listened to every episode.
I have to say, I'm starting to love daily podcasts.
Oh, okay.
Podcasts that do every day because I feel like I need more good podcasts. And I need more to listen to. I need something.
I know. I hear you. Well, you should try this one because, so Shaun King gives you news stories that you don't hear in the mainstream news. And they're usually about people of color or people from marginalized groups. And they're usually like important stories that we need to know. And he is the place I'm learning about those things. And so I really appreciate his voice. Like I said, I've liked reading him on Instagram, but the fact that he has a podcast, you just put in the earbuds and for 10 to 15 minutes, learn something new is great.
Yeah, yeah. What did he do before this? Do you know?
Well, no, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I'm wondering because
I think he's always done this on social media, different social media platforms. And now he started this thing called the North Star, which is a news or like news stories, or like a news company that's going to tell alternative stories. Not alternative.
So
really important stories that we are not hearing right now in the mainstream media.
They probably shouldn't be alternative stories, but they, in reality,
it's a media company. Yeah, that's what
they're not in the mainstream.
Yeah. So I don't know. He has this podcast. I'm not sure what else is going to come out of this media company, but I'm really liking the podcast. So I feel like that, along with the Katie Couric email newsletter, is like a perfect pairing because I can hear what's going on, like in the mainstream news, just a quick thing, and then I can get something in depth from Shaun. So.
Yes.
I'm liking both of those.
Great.
Yeah.
Love it. I'm excited about that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for listening. And if you would like to follow us, we are on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Homeschool Unrefined. And we also have a website, homeschoolunrefined.com, where you can find links to everything that we talked about. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Homeschool Unrefined is created and produced by Maren and Angela Sizer. Ethan Miller is our editor, and Amanda Ginn is our VP of all the important things.